Alright, this is Galactical Guardians 28, which is terrible. This is written by Michael Valentino with art by Trimpe. I reviewed part 2 of this a long time ago. And the main difference between this one and part 2 is the art. The art in this is dreadful. It is Trimpe with his controversial 90s style. It just looks a bit janky. It looks a bit awkward on this cover. It'll take you 4 pages before everyone agrees that it is awful. There is a lot going on in this. It is the final story arc written by Michael Valentino, who got fired from the book for wanting to go into iMag Comics. He had plans for this series all the way until issue 50. And he was open to work at both Marvel and iMag, but he got fired. And so this story is kind of when he's already out the door. Next issue, part 2, is someone else writing the script. This also ties into Affinity Wars, but that is more so in part 2. And we have a new iteration of the Masters of Evil, led by Dan Slott. They are a joke. Everything about this is a lark. Dan Slott is a loser to begin with, but here he is just copying Baron Zero's previous plan of taking over the Avengers' house. His assemblage of villains are not fearsome. A bunch of D-listers like Jackhammer and Powder Keg. And then 3 who were also with Baron Zero's more successful campaign. Crusher Man, Jamelia Jamil, and Yellow Wasp. They are those 3. And they are the only ones that pose any threat to anyone. Since we looked at her history sort of in Dead Avengers, Yellow Wasp has a little train of thought here, internal monologue about how she actually wanted to join the Avengers, but it didn't pan out. So here she is. And some of the art, like this panel of Yellow Wasp, it's salvageable. And then we have this. The perfect portrait of Dan Slott. Fat gerbil man. It's at this point when you realise the art is hopeless and it isn't going to be able to help this story. And the story on paper is okay. The Galactical Guardians have to defend the Avengers' house from the bad guys. That works. That can be a lot of fun. The execution is another big fat fail though. It's not really taken seriously, or rather, the threat is never there. Possibly because we had seen the mastermind behind it, Dan Slott, as a fat gerbil man. But all of the villains are dispatched and then forgotten about by the plot. In this 2-part story, other than Dan Slott, every member of the Masters of Evil in part 1 here doesn't appear in part 2. It is a problem when you have Crusher Man, who is a legitimate threat here. He is incredibly powerful, and the story just forgets about him after he gets punched out. I didn't mind this run, but this final story stinks to high heaven. Most of this run on Galactical Guardians had better artwork, and the art here obviously sinks it a lot, but even with someone like Ron Lee, that is Stanley Lee's little brother, or one of the Buscema's, this would still not please from its poor script. Oddball gets 2 panels, and that is him dealt with, and that is probably about right. And that is what? 20% of the team down? We didn't really see some of the bad guys do much of anything. Crusher Man, he gets a proper, albeit still short, fight. And mainly because he is like the real villain, who is otherwise looking like shit by being on this laughable team. It's not meant to be a big joke, by the way. This isn't played as comedy. Most of the humour is derived from us looking back at it now and seeing how Dan Slott is pathetic, and how his plan is pathetic, and his team is mostly pathetic too. It's not meant to be funny. It's not meant to be the most serious thing ever, either. And it's definitely not meant to be as impactful as the Baron Zero story. It is meant to be an excuse to have the Galactical Guardians fight some supervillains. And that is acceptable, but it is executed imperfectly and then drawn idiotically. One of the only significant parts of this story is we have Yellow Wasp switch sides. She tries to help the Galactical Guardians, and she will then end up travelling to the future with them and joining their team. Crusher Man is defeated really easily, and it is just the Terminator 2 bit. Hasta la vista, rabies. Bang, bang, shatter. Take that, T-1000, you liquid bitch. It makes no sense that this is a 2-parter when you are finishing part 1 and they have taken out all of these Masters of Evil without working up much of a sweat. But then Fat Gerbil Man Dan Slott arrives with reinforcements, and his reinforcements are as painfully unimpressive as most of his initial team. When Shockster ranks as one of your team's more invaluable assets, you know you're in trouble. With part 2, the art improves slightly. Not much, but it's not by Trimpe. And instead, the crappiness of this story is really highlighted by a different artist. It is a very hard video I did where I reviewed part 2. I didn't know if it is worth watching, but I can't tell you that this story is not worth reading. There was something in there. There was something that could have functioned. Galactical Guardians versus Masters of Evil. But it flops out of the gate very hard. I would be happy to never think of this story arc ever again. So definitely 7 thumbs up.